What if I told you that in some US states, foreigners can no longer buy property? Or that new laws are making it nearly impossible for immigrants to live and work there legally? Sounds shocking, right? But it's happening right now. Across America, states are cracking down on immigration like never before. Florida has banned certain foreigners from owning land. Texas has set up its own migrant patrols. And other states? They're passing laws that make it harder for non-citizens to rent homes, get jobs, or even access healthcare. But why? What's driving this sudden surge in anti-immigration laws? Some claim it's about national security, fearing that foreign buyers and illegal immigrants pose a risk to the country. Others argue it's about protecting American jobs and resources, saying that too many immigrants are taking opportunities meant for U.S. citizens. And then there's the question of politics. Are these crackdowns really about public safety, or just a way to win votes? The truth? It's complicated, and what's happening now could change the future of immigration in America forever. In this video, we're diving deep into 10 powerful reasons why U.S. states are restricting foreigners, and some of them might surprise you. So stick around, because what's coming next will open your eyes to a side of this issue that most people don't talk about. Let's get started. Number 1. National security concerns. Imagine this. A foreign investor buys acres of land right next to a U.S. military base. Sounds like a scene from a spy movie, right? But it's real. In fact, cases like this have already happened, pushing some states to ban foreign land ownership, especially by buyers from China, Russia, and other nations deemed hostile. For many lawmakers, national security is the #1 reason behind stricter immigration laws. The fear that foreign individuals or groups could use America's open economy and immigration system to gain influence, steal intelligence, or even pose a direct threat to national safety. Border security is also a major factor. States like Texas and Arizona argue that the federal government isn't doing enough to stop illegal immigration, forcing them to take matters into their own hands. That's why Texas has set up its own border security force and passed laws that allow state officers to arrest and deport migrants. And then there's the terrorism angle. Some politicians claim that weaker immigration policies could allow bad actors to enter the U.S. unnoticed. While studies show that most immigrants commit fewer crimes than native-born Americans, fear of potential security risks keeps pushing states toward tougher laws. But is this really about security, or is it more about control and political strategy? That's a question sparking heated debates across the country. And national security isn't the only concern. Some argue that immigration is hurting American workers and driving down wages. Let's talk about that next. Number 2. Job market competition. Have you ever heard the argument that immigrants are taking American jobs? It's a claim that has fueled debates for decades, and now it's one of the biggest reasons why states are restricting foreigners. Many lawmakers argue that an increase in foreign workers, especially undocumented ones, puts huge pressure on the job market. They claim that businesses often prefer hiring immigrants because they accept lower wages and work longer hours, making it harder for American workers to compete. Take the construction, agriculture, and service industries, for example. These sectors rely heavily on immigrant labor, and some say that without these workers, the economy would struggle. But opponents argue that this drives wages down, making it harder for American-born workers to earn a fair salary. And it's not just low-wage jobs, even high-skilled positions are affected. The tech industry, for instance, hires thousands of foreign workers through H-1B visas, which allows companies to recruit skilled professionals from other countries. Critics say this gives big corporations a loophole to hire cheaper talent from overseas instead of investing in American workers. In response, some states are cracking down on undocumented labor, tightening work visa requirements, and even penalizing businesses that hire too many foreign employees. But is this really helping the American worker, or is it just a way to shift the blame for deeper economic issues? And beyond jobs, there's another major argument for immigration restrictions: the rising costs of public services. Let's break that down next. Number 3. Economic strain on public services. Imagine this. A state's public hospital is overcrowded, schools are struggling to keep up, and welfare programs are running out of funds. Some politicians claim that immigration is to blame. But is that really the case? Many states argue that a large influx of immigrants, especially undocumented ones, puts too much pressure on public services. They claim that hospitals provide free emergency care to uninsured immigrants. Public schools must accommodate non-English speaking students, and welfare programs like food assistance and housing support are stretched too thin. For example, Texas and Florida have both raised concerns about the rising cost of healthcare for undocumented immigrants. Since federal law requires hospitals to treat anyone in an emergency, regardless of immigration status, state taxpayers often end up covering the bill. Public schools are another hot topic. Some states say that accommodating non-English speaking students requires more teachers, translators, and resources, increasing education costs. This has led some lawmakers to propose cutting public benefits for undocumented families, sparking controversy over whether that's ethical or even legal. But here's where the debate gets tricky. Do immigrants actually take more than they give? Studies show that while some immigrants rely on public assistance, many also contribute to the economy by paying taxes and taking jobs that others avoid. Still, the argument over public service strain is fueling tougher immigration laws, with states aiming to limit access to healthcare, education, and welfare for non-citizens. And it's not just public services under threat. Many states are now restricting foreigners from even owning property. Let's dive into that next. Number 4. Housing crisis and property ownership restrictions. Imagine searching for your dream home, only to find out that you're not allowed to buy it just because you're a foreigner. Sounds extreme, right? But in some U.S. states, that's exactly what's happening. Recently, states like Florida, Texas, and South Carolina have passed laws banning or restricting foreign ownership of land and real estate. The main concern? That foreign investors, especially from countries like China, Russia, and Iran, are driving up housing prices and buying land near sensitive locations like military bases. Supporters of these laws argue that wealthy foreign buyers are making home ownership unaffordable for average Americans. In cities like Miami, New York, and Los Angeles, international investors have purchased luxury apartments and entire neighborhoods, leading to skyrocketing property prices and housing shortages. But critics say these restrictions could hurt the economy by discouraging foreign investment in real estate. Some also argue that these laws unfairly discriminate against legal immigrants and even foreign-born U.S. residents who want to own a home. And here's another twist. Some U.S. citizens are getting caught in the crossfire. There have already been cases where legal immigrants and even American-born citizens with family ties to certain countries were blocked from buying property under these new laws. So, is this a necessary move to protect American land, or is it an overreaction driven by fear? With states cracking down on property ownership, immigration isn't just about jobs and public services anymore. It's affecting where people can live. And speaking of restrictions, some states are also targeting immigrants through political and legal battles. Let's break that down next. We put a lot of effort into making these videos, so if you found this one eye-opening, hit that subscribe button. It's just one click. And we want to hear from you. Do you think these immigration restrictions are justified or too extreme? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Blast off. Number 5. Political pressure and public opinion. Ever notice how immigration laws get stricter right before an election? That's no coincidence. In many states, immigration crackdowns aren't just about security or the economy. They're about politics. Politicians know that immigration is a hot-button issue that can influence voters. By pushing for tougher laws, they appeal to those who believe immigration is causing problems like job competition, crime, and economic strain. This is especially true in states with large immigrant populations, where public opinion on the issue is deeply divided. For example, during election seasons, candidates often promise stricter immigration policies to gain support. You'll hear slogans about protecting American jobs or securing the border. But how much of it is actually about solving problems, and how much is just about winning votes? At the same time, public opinion plays a huge role. Surveys show that Americans are split on immigration. Some believe it strengthens the country by bringing in new talent and labor, while others see it as a threat to resources and national identity. This divide is why some states double down on restrictions, while others push for more inclusive policies. In Texas and Florida, we've seen aggressive laws against undocumented migrants, while states like California and New York have expanded protections and benefits for immigrants. So, is immigration policy really about public interest, or is it just a political game? That's a debate that's only getting louder. And while politics plays a major role, another argument fueling restrictions is crime concerns. But are immigrants really making America less safe? Let's dive into the facts next. Number 6. Increased crime concerns. You've probably heard this claim before, and you may want more immigrants mean more crime. But is that really true, or is it just a myth used to justify stricter laws? Some politicians argue that undocumented immigration leads to higher crime rates, using it as a reason to pass tougher restrictions. States like Texas and Arizona have even created their own migrant patrols, claiming they need to protect communities from criminal activity. But here's the reality. Multiple studies show that immigrants, both legal and undocumented, actually commit fewer crimes than U.S.-born citizens. FBI and research data consistently reveal that cities with higher immigrant populations often have lower crime rates. So where does this fear come from? One reason is isolated high-profile cases. When a crime is committed by an undocumented immigrant, it makes headlines, fueling the perception that immigration leads to more violence. However, the same crimes committed by U.S. citizens don't get the same level of attention. Another reason, political rhetoric. By linking crime to immigration, some politicians gain support for stricter policies, even if the data doesn't fully support their claims. That said, concerns over border security, drug trafficking, and gang violence are still real issues. But is targeting immigrants the right solution? Or is this just a convenient scapegoat for deeper problems in the justice system? One thing is certain, crime is being used as a justification for some of the strictest immigration laws we've seen in years. And that's not the only legal battle happening. Next, let's talk about the growing conflict between state and federal immigration laws. We work tirelessly to bring you well-researched, thought-provoking content. So, if you appreciate the effort, hit that subscribe button. It's just one click. And we'd love to hear your take. Are these immigration crackdowns making America safer, or are they just political fear tactics? Let us know in the comments. Blast off. Number 7. Federal versus state conflicts. Did you know that some states are passing their own immigration laws, even if they directly go against federal policies? The U.S. government is supposed to control immigration, but with Washington gridlocked, states are taking matters into their own hands, and it's creating a legal battle like never before. Take Texas, for example. The state has passed laws allowing local police to arrest and deport migrants, something that has traditionally been handled by federal immigration authorities. But here's the problem. Federal law says states don't have that power. This has led to lawsuits, protests, and political clashes between state leaders and the federal government. And Texas isn't alone. Florida, Georgia, and Arizona have also introduced strict immigration laws, from banning sanctuary cities to requiring employers to verify the immigration status of all workers. Meanwhile, states like California and New York are taking the opposite approach, expanding protections for immigrants and refusing to cooperate with federal deportation efforts. So, who really has the final say? The states or the federal government? That question is at the center of multiple court battles, and the outcome could reshape immigration policy in the U.S. for years to come. But while governments fight over who should make the rules, another issue is causing tension: how well immigrants integrate into American culture, especially in education. Let's talk about that next. We dig deep to bring you the truth behind these complex issues, and your support means everything. If you found this video insightful, hit that subscribe button. It takes just 1 second. And tell us in the comments, should states be allowed to create their own immigration laws, or should it all be handled by the federal government? Down. Number 8. Education and cultural integration challenges. What happens when a school suddenly has hundreds of new students who don't speak English? What if teachers aren't trained to help them? And what if taxpayers feel they're the ones paying the price? This is exactly what some U.S. states are facing. With increasing immigration, schools in Texas, Florida, and Arizona are struggling to keep up with the demand for bilingual education, special programs, and extra resources. Many argue that integrating immigrant children into the education system is too expensive and puts pressure on local schools. Schools are required to provide English as a second language (ESL) programs, additional tutors, and cultural support, which some lawmakers claim is draining state education budgets. On the other hand, supporters argue that education is the key to helping immigrants contribute to society. The faster kids learn English and adapt, the more successful they'll be, benefiting the country in the long run. They point out that many immigrant families pay taxes, work hard, and want a better future for their children. But here's where the real controversy begins. Some states are trying to limit educational access for undocumented children. In Texas, there have been proposals to block funding for these students, arguing that it's unfair for taxpayers to support them. However, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that every child has the right to a public education, regardless of immigration status. So, is immigration really hurting the education system? Or is this debate just another way to justify tougher policies? And education isn't the only issue border states are facing. Some argue they're dealing with the biggest burden of all, illegal crossings. Let's dive into that next. Number 9. Border state pressures. If you lived in a state where thousands of people were crossing the border every day, how would you feel? For states like Texas, Arizona, and California, this isn't just a policy debate, it's a daily reality. Border states argue that they are carrying the heaviest burden when it comes to immigration. Every year, millions of migrants attempt to cross the southern border, some legally, some illegally. And with federal immigration enforcement stretched thin, many of these states feel they have no choice but to take action themselves. For example, Texas has deployed its own National Guard troops to patrol the border and built makeshift barriers to prevent illegal crossings. Florida's governor has sent law enforcement officers to Texas to help with border security, even though Florida isn't a border state. These states claim that the federal government isn't doing enough to stop the crisis, forcing them to pass their own restrictive laws. But here's where the debate gets complicated. Who is responsible for undocumented migrants once they arrive? Some states, like Texas, have started buzzing migrants to cities like New York, Chicago, and Washington, D.C., arguing that these sanctuary cities should share the burden. Critics call it a political stunt, while supporters say it's a necessary wake-up call. So, are border states right to take immigration enforcement into their own hands, or should the federal government be doing more? And speaking of government action, some states are now restricting immigration for an entirely new reason: global politics. Let's unpack that next. Number 10. Influence of global politics. What if immigration policies weren't just about jobs or security, but about global power struggles? Believe it or not, international tensions are now shaping how U.S. states handle immigration. Some states are cracking down on foreign property ownership and visa approvals, not just because of economic concerns, but because of who's buying the land. Take Florida, for example. It recently passed a law restricting property purchases by citizens from China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. The fear? That foreign buyers could be acting on behalf of their governments to gain influence in the U.S. It's not just about real estate. States are also targeting foreign workers, students, and investors based on geopolitical concerns. After rising tensions with China, some lawmakers have called for limits on student visas for Chinese nationals in STEM fields, fearing intellectual property theft. Others have proposed blocking business investments from certain countries, arguing that foreign-owned companies could be used for espionage or economic control. Supporters of these restrictions say they are protecting U.S. interests from potential foreign threats. But critics argue that these laws fuel discrimination, harming law-abiding immigrants who simply want to work, study, or build a life in America. So, are these immigration crackdowns about national security, economic protection, or just political fear-mongering? Whatever the case, the impact is real, and it's changing the way immigrants are treated in the U.S. right now. With so many states tightening immigration rules, the question remains, is this the future of America, or will these restrictions backfire? So, here we are. Immigration laws are tightening, states are passing their own restrictions, and the debate over foreigners in America is more intense than ever. From job competition and national security to housing laws and global politics, we've broken down 10 major reasons why U.S. states are cracking down on immigration. But the big question is, where does this all lead? Will these policies actually solve the problems they claim to address, or will they create even bigger challenges for businesses, communities, and the economy? And how far will states go before these restrictions start backfiring? One thing is clear: immigration will remain one of the most heated and complex issues in America. Whether these crackdowns bring real solutions or just political drama, that's something only time will tell. But now we want to hear from you. We work hard to bring you well-researched, thought-provoking content, and your support means everything. If you found this video insightful, hit that subscribe button. It's free and helps us keep going. And now, we want your take. Do you think these immigration restrictions will help America, or will they cause more harm than good? Let's talk in the comments. Down arrow fire.